Now, this is where things get really juicy. From that podcast, someone saw me on it and he reached out and said, hey, I have an editor position opening up at astrology.com. Are you interested? He was like, oh, we're doing a partnership with the Astro Twins. And I was like, I just want to keep like honing in on why it's so important to just be your authentic self. Never had none of these things I like tried to do. They kind of like fell in my lap. Hi, my name's Tamerri. I'm the AstroFashionista. Today I'm here to talk about my journey to becoming an astrologer and a product developer, which is very random, I think, when people hear this and hear what I do for a living, but it's not random. It was aligned, it was destined. Your life is destined as well. And a big way that we can find out what we're born to do, our strengths, our talents, the things that really fill us up, is through our astrological natal chart. And that is the foundation of how I was able to navigate my professional life, my love life, my friendships, money, all of that. So let's get into it. This story starts really when I was born. My name is Tamerri. It's an ancient name for Egypt. It means gift of the Nile or gift from God's land. My name came from one of these books. My dad told me when, he's an African history scholar, architect by trade, very creative mind, Libra. And Dr. Ben was his mentor, Egyptologist. He said, when I have a daughter, I'm going to name her Tamerri. And so I was his firstborn. All things Egypt were poured into me when I was born. I have a brand called Gift of the Nile. We'll get into that later. Tamerri Zemaya, born with leadership, Ater, high in stature, is a whole story about how we got our last name. I don't have time for that in this video, but it's a Sudanese name. And so that's my name. And so when I was born, my dad was actually at my godfather, his lecture. My godfather, Ashra was doing a lecture, and his daughter was born the year before while he was doing that same lecture. My god sister's name is Isis. Isis is an Egyptian goddess, or Aset. And so one of my names was Isis Dimeji. Isis comes again. So that was like another name. But the significance of my birth was that I was born on Easter Sunday and Earth Day. The way Easter Sunday is picked, it's the first full moon after the spring equinox every year. And so there's an astronomical influence to Easter. So I was born on Easter Sunday. I was born on Earth Day. I'm a Taurus. I was born with my sun in 3 degrees of Taurus. If you know anything about degrees in astrology. So I'm at the very beginning, the first decan. And when I was an infant, my dad decided to have a naming ceremony for me that one of his best friends, Baba Doye, who is a spiritual advisor to me. I've had him on the channel. I've interviewed him. He held this naming ceremony for me. And he did my natal chart. And an astrological natal chart is basically a snapshot of how the universe looks the moment you were born. It's just, maybe I'll insert a little graphic here. You've seen an astrologer, you talk to an astrologer. Astrologers use natal charts when they're doing chart readings to really dig into what your personality is like. It shows like your general likes and dislikes, your romantic partner preference, what you might do for a career, what your destiny is, your spiritual destiny, but also your material destiny. Baba Doye, one of the things that I found out later is that when he conducts these naming ceremonies in this African traditional religion that he does it in, he doesn't always use natal charts. So I think it was significant that he used one in mine. He told me, because obviously I became an astrologer later, but it was something that he didn't always do. So one of the things that my dad always told me growing up was that, because you were born under the sign of the bull and Taurus, we don't put you in red. So like I never wore red, like pretty much never in life. I really didn't wear red. I would, like, when I got older, like really into fashion, I would do like red shoe, pop of red, I do red lip. But I never really wore red growing up, which sounds weird, but that was one of the things that, Baba Doye said to, put me in yellow and bright colors, and things that were going to really uplift. A significant memory that I have about astrology is, I'm from LA, born and raised, and I went to elementary school. Shout out to Windsor Hills Elementary. One of my friends, Milan, who I'm still friends with today, she asked me my zodiac sign when I was like 6 years old. We were in Miss Greenlee's class, and I don't have good memory. I have Neptune Sun trine Neptune, and I contribute that conjunct Mercury also to my loss of memory. Like I have really short-term memory, unless it's like astrology related, then I'm like Rain Man. But like there's significant memories in my life, and this stood out so much to me that she asked me what a zodiac sign is, because I was like, what is that? Like I'm 6. We're in 2nd grade, and I remember going home and asking my dad, like, what's a zodiac sign? And, you know, kind of elaborating on it. And we always had like, he had this map of like the constellations up. And so like he explained it to me, like this is so vivid in my mind. So obviously I naturally became a fan of astrology as I got older. So like through elementary school, you know, middle school, high school, it was one of those things that I was just always fascinated with astrology. And I'm 40. So just to give you some context, I was born in 1984. So astrology growing up for me was not what it is today in this digital era that we live in, where everybody, you know, has co-star and the pattern, and everybody knows their rising moon, sun sign like that. It was not that. A big thing that happened when I was 13 years old, and I'm skipping because this is really a big part of the story, is I lost my mom to suicide. And I have a younger brother, Taharka, and he is 2 years younger than me, Sagittarius. Sagittarius, Virgo rising, Taurus moon. Just to give context, my dad's Libra. We don't know his rising sign, Aries moon. My mom was Capricorn, Pisces rising, Libra moon. Obviously, that was a big tragedy that happened for our family. It completely changed the trajectory of everything. I think I had a really good childhood. Like when I look back, like I had so much love, and my grandparents were supportive. I had 3 grandparents for majority of my like adult or young adult life. My parents were supportive. My mom was very like, she was Capricorn, so she was very organized and made us go to all these programs and made sure our education was good. And so I think she kind of took care of like the external school life stuff. And my dad really gave us a big foundation on like African history, knowing your roots, knowing who you are, you know, knowing about different religions. We grew up in a very, I would say, untraditional household as compared to like other families in LA, meaning that there was a lot of just, you know, we weren't Christian, even though my dad's family, like most of them are, you know, both sides of the family are Christian, and there's a lot of like pastors and stuff in the family, but he really wanted us to give us let that be our own decision. We weren't forced into a religion, but we were educated about different religions. So Islam, you know, we had the Quran in our house, and, you know, my uncle was a part of the Nation of Islam. And so I think it was just more of a world view that I think really shaped who I am in terms of like being open-minded. Is, you know, I have a Taurus sun, but I have Scorpio rising, Aquarius moon. And so your moon in astrology is usually connected like to your nurturing, your upbringing. It could be your mother. Your 4th house is kind of your foundation, the home structure. And for me, that's Aquarius, which is, you know, forward thinking and unique and different. And my moon is in the 4th house in the whole sign house system, but it's in a T-square getting challenged. And so I had this experience with my mom at 13. My brother was, you know, 11. He has a Taurus moon. Pluto opposes his moon. If you know astrology, you kind of understand that that's kind of a heavy energy. And, you know, I have Pluto opposing my sun, and the sun and Pluto are squaring my moon. So we both were supposed to, or had this experience of like a big loss with our primary like nurturer. So this is significant because as I went through, so I was in high school, I skipped a grade, so I've always been a year younger than everybody. I was 13 in my first year of high school, and I went to Palisades High School, the high school that caught on fire during the LA fires in Pacific Palisades. And this happened, and I completely shut down. So I didn't really tell a lot of people. It was my first year of school, so obviously I'm still making friends. I didn't talk about it. Of course I cried, at the funeral and, alone, but it happened and then I moved on. And when I say move on, meaning that it wasn't like a big focus for me. I like threw myself into just activities like, making friends and joining the cheer squad and joining the dance team and like just being busy. So I learned how to like achieve through my trauma. And that doesn't work. Meaning that later on, those things always catch up with you. And eventually you have to process your emotions. You have to deal with those things because they're still there, even if you don't acknowledge them. So, it was one of those things where I think through my teenage years, now that I can look back, like I had a really good, had the best of, like my friends from high school and elementary are still my best friends. Like all my friends in my life, I've known pretty much all my life. And it helps that I still live in Los Angeles. But like I have a really good, solid team of like friends that are like family. And so that part of my life was always really good. But I think the part of like the feeling like the broken home part, the fact that my family never talked about this tragedy, like no one really understood why my mom would do something like this, and no one will ever understand fully why she did. But I suffered in silence for a long time. So for me, that manifested as like, silent depression and anxiety that I didn't really understand. I didn't understand why I was like sad or why things were heavy, even if outwardly it looked fine. And so when I went to college, again, I was focused on, okay, what's my career? What's my career I want to achieve? And so I went to Loyola Marymount University for undergrad here in LA. I majored in television production. I did like 7 internships. I wanted to be a producer, and I was like really into beauty and fashion, like since probably like maybe 11 years old. I started getting like MAC makeup. MAC was like the it brand back in my day. I spent all my money on it. My first job in high school was at Body Shop. It's like a beauty skincare company. And then I worked at Contempo Casuals, a clothing brand. I did that up until I went to college. And so that was always my interest and my focus. I used to watch, E! Network before there was this E! Network used to show like fashion shows, and I was always into the fashion shows. My prom dress was like a Versace inspired dress that my grandma's sorority sister made. I did all my makeup for prom, and this is before YouTube. This is before Instagram. This is for any type of digital. Like I was like looking at books. That was always my interest, was like reading fashion books, and I love books. As you can see, it's very much a passion of mine. Went to college. I wanted to produce fashion content. So like the shows that I would watch on E! Networks, like I don't even remember the names of them, but they'd have like Runway TV, and I was like, oh, I want to produce fashion type content. So that's why I majored in television production. And one of my internships was at the Style Network at E! Networks. And so I'm like trying all these different things. I did Fox and MTV and, scripted and non-scripted, trying to find my footing. Then I did PR. I was like, well, maybe I should be a publicist. I like to talk to people. So then I interned at BWR, and then a boutique PR firm, and nothing really stuck, even though it was like, I think that was important to like see what I didn't want to do. Also, like as much as the way you find out what you do want to do, sometimes it's through process of elimination. Like, oh no, I don't like that. So I'm glad I had all that experience. So when I graduated college in 2005, I got a job right off the bat at a boutique marketing agency here in Beverly Hills. And it was like an assistant job, barely any money, but it was like good that I got a job right out of college. I was, doing the thing, and I'm like, oh, and one thing about me, I'm very like, I'm super ambitious. So I'm always wanting to skip steps and like go to the next level. So of course I'm like, I'm graduated. I did all these internships. Like, where's my dream job? And it doesn't work like that. And with my chart, it definitely doesn't work like that. I have Saturn in the first house conjunct my ascendant. And that is like, Saturn is the planet of like hard lessons, sacrifice, responsibility, I put a lot of pressure on myself, but that's also needing to master something before you move on. And so I have it in my chart where I can't just jump into something and like excel. Like I want to master it and become an expert, and then I feel ready. I'm working in this office, and you know, it's one of those jobs where I'm like, just like, oh, okay, what's the next thing? I'm like looking for other jobs while I'm on the job. We would rent out office spaces to other companies, and there was really only one other person in there. And one of the managers, she was a talent manager, and she rented the office. She managed the Astro Twins. And the Astro Twins are, they're celebrity astrologers. They've been astrologers for ever now. So this was 20 years ago. When she told me this, I was like, oh, I love astrology. Like, it's so fun. And she's like, oh, I'll have them do a reading for you when they come to the office, because they lived in New York. And I was like, so excited. So when they came into the office, the Astro Twins, Ophi and Tally, I was like really excited to meet them. And I told them, I was like, you know, this is like my chart. I'm kind of into like, at that point, I was actually trying to do like on-air hosting. I was like, well, maybe I should be an on-air host and do like, you know, interior design content or anything creative. Like it's always been like a goal. Like I just love creative stuff. And they were like, you know, looking at my chart and say, yeah, maybe. And the crazy thing is that when I first met them, they looked at me, and I can't remember which, but they kind of like work in unison. They're twins. So like they're so in sync all the time. And I remember them looking at me and being like, you're either a Taurus or a Scorpio. And I was like, I'm a Taurus, and I have a Scorpio ascendant or Scorpio rising. And so for those of you who don't know, so many people know this, but your rising, your ascendant sign is the sign that was ascending over the horizon, eastern horizon, at the moment of your birth. And so it's kind of like an imprint on your personality. It rules your first house, which is all about you, your body, your personality, your looks, how you express yourself. And so your rising sign is like it's like the first impression you give off when people first meet you. And so for me, that's Scorpio. I have a lot of Scorpio planets in my first house. So I have Saturn in Scorpio, I have Mars in Scorpio, Pluto in Scorpio, and then Scorpio rising. And then I have Taurus sun, and then the Mercury in Taurus. So there's this opposition in my chart. And so when they did that, I was like, hold up, how'd you do that? I need to learn how to do that. And I remember being like, okay, like I'm hooked. I think I went to the Barnes and Noble at the Grove here in Los Angeles, like with my dad and my brother. Like we used to always go to the bookstores together and just like, you know, browse around. And I got my first astrology book that I read cover to cover. I actually still have it. It was the Llewellyn's Complete Guide to Astrology or something like that. And I'll link it below. At this point, I knew that I had this like natal chart reading that was, you know, told my dad I'm a Taurus and all this stuff, but I didn't know what a natal chart was at this point. Like I didn't know that was like a thing in astrology. I thought astrology was just zodiac signs. 21, yes, 2005. So I was like, what is this circle thing? What is this chart thing? So I started reading this book, and I'm like, oh wow, like there's so much to this. And I remember reading about the Scorpio rising, and I have the chills right now because I just remember that moment of like reading about my placements and having so much clarity about who I was without like from a book, and like some things I was reading, and I didn't understand like how it could be so accurate. And this is like something somebody wrote, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. So naturally I became obsessed. Pluto is obsession, and I have, you know, all these Scorpio planets. I became obsessed, like researching everything. I'm in like all these forums, and you know, this is the days back when like AOL Messenger was around, and like, you know, you could run your chart online, but it wasn't like how it is today. So I'm still buying books. So then I started buying all these books, and I'm like reading and learning. And then I remember also like the personal astrology was important, right? Because I'm like, at that point, I'm like, my first job out of college, I'm like, what am I supposed to be doing with my life? Like I have all these interests, but like, what's my career? I just know I want to be successful. Like what, and I want to do something that I'm going to love and have fun doing. I remember, like emailing a bunch, like sending out a mass email, like asking all my friends to send me their birth times, because I wanted to run their charts. And I just started doing it for fun. Like it was just like a fun hobby for me. So like from that job, I was only at the job for like a year, but that was like so significant. It was like, I feel like that was the reason that I worked at that place, was to meet the astral twins. Then I went from there and I worked as a buyer for a boutique clothing company that we did private shopping. And I worked for this woman, and it was in West Hollywood. And I was like running her business. Like she's like, she runs my business. She's from New York and just chain smoker. She's like, yeah, Tamerri, you run my business. And I was like 22, 23 years old. And I just knew how to like do stuff. And that was at Saturn on my ascendant. But at the same time, I didn't feel capable. It was crazy. Like I was doing all these things, but I never felt ready or capable to do them. But that was a really fun job because we were like buying clothes for like really wealthy, primarily women, here in LA and on the East Coast. But then I got to do like buying with a lot of the, contemporary brands. I would go to their showrooms. I would travel to New York occasionally. It was like a lot of like driving around to beautiful mansions in Malibu, Beverly Hills, Bel Air. Like I was on the town. Just, connecting with people. LA is a big city, so like there's so many different pockets, but like to really get to see how other like people are living and the amount of disposable income that some people have is like insane, just to spend on clothing every week. That was interesting. I was like working a lot all the time. During this time, like emotionally, I'm like, there's a lot. It's heavy for me because I'm still not feeling like I know what I'm supposed to do. It's like those growing pains in your early 20s. I have this serious boyfriend that I'm with, and he's helping me through things. And I remember feeling just like down and heavy and depressed, and anxiety a lot would try to help me. But the astrology always kind of helped me understand some of the heavier things that were going on, but also was like the lack of not dealing with what happened to my mom, right? So that was all coming up for me as a young adult. So I'm trying to navigate that. At that job, there was like something happened where like I couldn't find a check that a client had sent, and she was really kind and treated me like family, this woman that I worked for, but she was a little, kooky. And I remember just being like, oh, I've had it. Like, I can't do this job anymore. And I like didn't show up the next day. And of course, like we found the check like the next day. But the crazy thing is, that's the thing about a Taurus. We will take abuse for so long, and then one day we just like, we snap. And so I snapped. I was like, I am not doing this anymore. Like, this is too much on my emotionally for me. And I knew I was capable of so much more, like I was like, this is not it. Like, where am I going to go from here? I don't really want to take over her business. And so there was a job opening. I didn't even care remember how I found it, at Marie Claire magazine. And Marie Claire used to be, a top fashion magazine, probably one of the top fives, at least here in the US. Vogue, Allure, Allure's more beauty, Elle. It's Hearst magazine. There was a job here on the West Coast in their advertising, sales, and marketing, for an assistant job. I remember going on the interview, and it was actually like a temp position, but it was like temp to hire. The woman that I was working for, her assistant was like moving on. And so I remember I went to the interview, and I like asked her her zodiac sign, which the nerve and the gall. She's a Scorpio, of course. And I was like, I just remember like, what's your sign? And she like told me, and we just like, I think she really liked me, and she took a chance on me. Just, I had done like one assistant job, and I'd done all these internships. So like I knew how to like get things done, but I'd never worked in publishing. So that was a whole thing, like being trained in this whole new world of publishing and advertising, sales and marketing, working with a lot of like brands. All of our brands were all West Coast brands that were like advertising in the magazine, doing editorial credits, and, working with the editorial side, being in sync, but, here in LA. I got to go to New York a couple times. That was fun. I like made friends with like the other assistants in New York and also in LA. But that job was hard. I of course ended up working for one of the hardest people that you could work for. And that's the funny thing about my chart, is that there's like, this Pluto opposition, the Saturn in the first sign. Things just don't come easy to me. And I think from the outside looking in, it looks like it's easy, but not. I was there for about 3 years. And this was a time, I think like, this might have been before like The Hills came on and they were like interning at the magazines, but it was like that time where, I don't know if any of you guys, how old you are, that show The Hills, and she was like interning at like Teen Vogue and stuff. This was like that era. So like I was like working in that during that era. So that was like fun. But it was one of those things where it was kind of like a dead end job. Because in LA is really small. So if you're not becoming one of the directors, you maybe move to New York, or maybe you want to go to the editorial side. I didn't ever had an interest in living in New York. That boss left and someone else replaced her, and she had come from Glamour. And I remember meeting with her and she was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, I don't know, like maybe marketing, maybe I want to work for a brand. Because at this point I'm exposed to different brands because I know all the brands on the West Coast because they're all of our clients. I was like, yeah, maybe I want to go for a brand. And she's like, okay, well, I'm going to help you find a job, which is crazy because like who helps their assistant leave? She also had another assistant at Glamour that I think she wanted to bring over, but she also knew like, you've been here for 3 years. It's probably time for you to move on. She's a Leo and Leo rules my 10th house of career. So this is interesting because your 10th house in your chart, it's the career point. It's like your reputation in the world, your destiny. Your midheaven is a career point that shows like a destiny where you're headed. So she helped me, and I started interviewing, and I got an interview at Murad Skincare. And the funny thing is that her friend worked at Murad, but then also they were one of our clients. And so like we kind of like sent my resume from two different perspectives, like two different ways, like through a PR firm and then through her friend. And I remember, it's so crazy, like the universe is so crazy because things always come full circle. I remember getting an email back like, wow, this girl, Tamerri, is very popular. I'm getting her resume from two different people. And it was Jen, my friend Jen, who I'm friends with her now, but like before, I didn't know her back then, but she wrote, I remember this email coming from her, which is crazy because later we became friends and we became like soul sisters, and she's really into astrology, and I do readings for her and I've done it for her daughter. So everything comes full circle. So I interviewed at Murad, and it was for a product marketing coordinator job. And I didn't know, I figured it was just marketing. I'm like, okay, marketing, like just tell me what I need to do. I'll figure it out. So I remember having the interview, and it went well. I got hired on the team, and lo and behold, it's more like product development. So product marketing at like a skincare beauty brand. And I didn't know this job existed, by the way. Product marketing can mean that you're literally like creating the product. I don't have like an actual product. For example, like say this was a product and you're like coming up with the positioning and the packaging and the costing and what's going inside. Like it's this whole world that I didn't know existed. And so at that job, I learned the ropes about like, well, I wouldn't say I learned all the ropes, but learned a lot about how to make a product, and not only like making it, like the packaging and the process of like the timelines and the costing and, you know, the operational side, but also like the marketing side, the global accounts and retailers and like this whole world. And so I was there for about 2 years. Murad was a really pinnacle place for me. Every place is a trend. I met some people that I'm still friends with today. I was doing astrology. I was like doing people's astrology charts at work. I was like pulling cards for people. Like I had the whole thing. People would come by and in the morning they'd say, can you pull up a card for me today? And it'd be like their message for the day, angel cards. This was 2011. And I remember I had broken up with my boyfriend the same, like a month after I started, we broke up. And that was like, I was with him for 7 years. So this was like a really like a new era for me. The eclipses were involved. I won't get into that. It's a whole nother story. And so this was like a new era. Like I'm like a new career, a new everything. And my friend, so like I was on the marketing team, but I had a lot of friends that were on the PR team. So the friend that had gotten my resume and sent it to HR, we became friends. And I remember we would joke and I'd be like, I need to open a nail salon where you can do astrology. And we started calling it like psychic nails, and we called everything psychic nails. And we just had fun. Like it was like we worked hard, but we like, it was like such a like a family type of environment. And Murad was a family owned brand at the time. It's owned by Unilever now. And after a while I was like, okay, it's time to move on. in my fashion. Like, what's next? I got a call from like a recruiter or something. And it was for a company that was like an agency that was managing beauty brands. And so it was called Hatch Beauty. And it's funny because my boss at Murat at the time had gotten approached by them too. So it was like we were both like interviewing at the same time with this company. It's so funny. And she and I were really close. I took a leap, went to go work there. And it was like one of the founders calls it Beauty MBA because it's like literally crazy. Thrown into the fire, startup. I was like one of the first 20 employees. They had a host of different brands. So essentially what they would do, have license agreements with brands, some of them, and we would make products for somebody that's like, you know, that a celebrity, and we would make the product for them essentially. And, or they could hire the agency side to like do the artwork for the packaging and all that stuff. So it was a really like interesting environment, super high pace, super like talking about, we worked all the time, a lot of travel involved, a lot of just, it was the trenches. But it was like such a good place for me to go because I really learned about like the side that I hadn't learned being like in this more corporate environment that was not a startup, you know, about, you know, the contract manufacturers being on site and, you know, having to QC things and problem solve, like being really scrappy and making things work. Like it was just beauty boot camp. That's all I can say. And I worked on, Salma Hayek had a line called Nuance. I worked on her line. There's a celebrity hairstylist, Orlando Pita. I worked on his line. Jenna Hip, she was a celebrity nail tech. I worked on her line. We had contracts with Costco, CVS, different retailers. I was there for 2 years, which was more like probably 10 years of experience in terms of like learning. And again, some of my closest friends I made there, and obviously was doing astrology. So this was about 2013. Yeah, 2013. Had a different boyfriend at that time. From there, I got an opportunity to work at Dermalogica. And Dermalogica is a skincare brand. It's a professional skin therapist brand, but they're in retailers like Sephora, Ulta. It was a lot like the Murat job, but just higher level. So I got the opportunity to work there, and I got that job through a friend who was actually an intern at Murat. We met there. She was on the PR team, and she was now at Dermalogica working in PR. And so she sent my resume. Lesson is to never burn your bridges. So I went to work at Dermalogica. I actually launched my website, AstroFashionista. So I was actually, you know, doing astrology readings, like kind of just like under the table, like people would pay me. And, you know, it wasn't like something that I was like actively like trying to source clients or anything, but I was like doing it. I was reading charts. And in 2009, actually I skipped some steps. In 2011, one of the times I took a couple classes with the Astro Twins, which was crazy. The Astro Twins would hold these classes, and I remember doing one with them virtual and like being like, hey, it's Tamerri. I'm like, hey, like, do you remember me? They're like, yes, oh my gosh. And then there was another course that I actually signed up with my boss at Murat. Like, we took the course together. And that was the Become Your Own Astrologer course. And so I signed up for that course. So that had to have been like 2011 or 12, one of those years. And I did that, and it was like, I loved it. It was fun to do it with her because she wanted to learn more. And so I'm like kind of teaching her some things, but I'm also learning some other tips because I want to just keep getting better at astrology. And so fast forward to 2015, I'm at Murat. I'm at Dermalogica. And I was like, okay, it's time for me to like launch, like really take this astrology thing serious. Like social media is starting to grow at this time, like Instagram. And it's becoming like more of a thing. And I was like, astrology is the future. Like, I was like, people are going to really be into it. Like, I just knew it was going to be a thing. And my boyfriend at the time, he was working in e-commerce at like a large brand that everybody uses. And he was like, okay, I'll help you with your website. So I launched my website, just to like, you know, friends, family. And I'm like, and my name was AstroFashionista. My ex-boyfriend had come up with that name. And I thought it was like kind of explained, you know, I'm into astrology, but this is like, you know, these are both sides of me, the beauty and the fashion side. And so, yeah, I just sent an email like, hey guys, like I'm doing readings if you want to hire me. And that's kind of like how the astrology like business started. And obviously I did like the business paperwork because I wanted to be legit. I knew I had to pay taxes and all that stuff. And I first set up a sole proprietorship, and then I moved to LLC. And so I started just like putting myself out there. So I'm at Dermalogica for 4 years. And during that time, I got a call from about a brand that was launching under the Who What Wear, Birdie, My Domain space. If any of you are familiar with those publications, owned by, started by Catherine Power and Hillary Kerr. And I used to follow them back when they first launched. Heard they were coming out with a new brand. And when I had the interview, I was like, oh, this sounds amazing. Like what? And by that time I was kind of like a little jaded with like doing the same thing over and over in beauty. I'm like, okay, what's next? And the brand was going to be like a millennial brand that was clean skincare and affordable. And I had really worked mostly with prestige brands, like luxury, prestige. Some at Hatch Beauty were not like super expensive, but I wanted like different experience. And so this job seemed great. It was like in West Hollywood, this beautiful office, and the Click office, because that was the name of the company. And it was Versed Skincare. And so we launched in 2019. Yeah, 2019. I started in 2018. So I was technically their first employee, like their first hire. They were like, they had employees from Who What Wear, Click, that were like brought over to work and incubate the brand. So that was like an amazing opportunity to go and work on a new brand like nobody has seen before, launching in all Target stores on day one, being there from where it's just like 4 of us in a room, 4 or 5 of us, like hiring everyone, building a team, coming up with the voice, like what we want the company culture to be like. Like that was like a once in a lifetime opportunity to like really do something from scratch. And all of my experience had led me up into this point, like being very heavily skincare focused. But the thing I want to mention is that in all of my job interviews, like I would have like a portfolio, like, oh, here's the launches I've worked on. This is, you know, my background. So that's a pro tip for all of you corporate girlies out there, having a professional portfolio. So I would include that I'm an astrologer. Like it wasn't something I ever wanted to hide because it was such a part of like who I am. And also, you know, my coworkers enjoyed it. Like it was something we talk about in the break room, lunch. So I'm in the Click office, or Who What Wear's headquarters, or we share offices with them. And it's a publication. So it's like working at a, you know, magazine essentially. And so there would be opportunities where like I got to contribute quotes for product launches that I worked on, but do it like an astrology themed, you know, story. I did readings in the office for like all the employees. Like it was a thing. So like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I showed up as my full self. When you're thinking about like your life purpose and what you're here to do, what you're born to do, you have to show up as your full self. If you cut a part of yourself off, you're really robbing yourself of the opportunity to really like be authentic, to grow, opportunities for people to like remember you when something comes up because you mentioned that. So for me, I think it's a really big bonus when people like talk about their talents and other skills outside of their job when they're at work. Like I really promote that. I don't know if everybody thinks that, but I think to get the best out of someone, you have to let them be their full selves. And so that was one thing. By me doing that, I was able to create opportunities for myself. Sorting through all this, like, but like, as I'm working in beauty, I'm getting calls from friends that work in the industry, like, hey, do you want to do readings at our launch party? Do you want to, you know, come, we're launching a new product and it's astrology themed. Do you want to do a live and takeover for us at our office? Like, there's all kinds of things that happen because I had already planted those seeds with like my coworkers and I was showing up as myself. And so those opportunities came. It would have never come if I had never said anything or been myself. So that happened. I remember we launched a product at Verse and I did like numerology readings for the influencers at this event, the products that I launched. So while I'm at Versed, I decided I wanted to go back to business school, and I got an opportunity to talk to one of the admissions people at UCLA Anderson, which is my dream school. I was telling her about my background, how I wanted to build like a global beauty, a wellness brand for myself, not beauty, but beauty adjacent, to work on spiritual wellness. I ended up applying, and it was the only school I applied to, executive MBA program. And I said, if I get in, I'm meant to go. I got in, it was meant for me to go. My boss said Versed, and the founder of Versed they were super supportive. They wrote my recommendation letters, and I went back to business school. So I'm like, and this was 2021 when I started. Yeah, so it was pandemic-y vibes. So I applied in 2020, yes, went back in 2021. So I'm working at Versed, doing astrology, starting business school. And in 2020, I started building my brand, Gift of the Nile. And so this is coming full circle because Gift of the Nile is a spiritual wellness brand rooted in Egyptian ritual. And my plan was to launch it to my community, get feedback, and then work on like an actual business plan in business school. And so that's what I did. So I went to UCLA. It was very different being an astrologer and product developer in a program with some of the most brilliant people I've ever come across in my life, because it's executive MBA level. So, you know, these are people that are CEOs and, you know, CFOs, and we had 2 rocket scientists in our class. Like, this is not, so I'm feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome, but I thrived in the program. I did great. I think I was really supported. I had a supportive team, because I did the entrepreneurial track, and you have to like pitch and get people to join your team, and it's this whole thing. And so I attracted the perfect people to help me on the journey. And it was really, really like one of the best decisions I ever decided. One of the best things I did was like taking a chance on myself. It's a very expensive program. Was married at the time. I thought it was going to be paid for through my spouse, but I ended up actually getting divorced during the program, or like after, the year I graduated, deciding, you know, that was like a whole journey because I had been growing and becoming this whole new person. And so that's a separate video. But it was, you know, I followed the steps. I followed the signs and the alignment, because it was actually one of the admissions people had like reached out to me on LinkedIn. So it wasn't one of those things where, it's one of those things I always wanted to do, but I didn't know when. And so the timing just ended up being right when I heard about the program, and, you know, the travel and, you know, just everything that it was about. It seemed perfect. Graduated, I switched industries for a short period of time, for like a year while I was in the program. Actually got a call. And this is how, like, when you follow your dreams and follow your alignment, this is where the story gets crazy. I did a podcast with Cammie Crawford. The reason how I got on Cammie's podcast is that she was looking for astrologers, and she really, she like asked a friend, and she was friends with, her good friend is good friends with my friend who I worked with at Hatch Beauty, one of my closest friends. And so she connected me to her. And so I did her podcast, which, by the way, was in the same building as Versed, and like literally a floor below, which was crazy. Cause I was like, I worked here. This was during the pandemic. I was like, we're not in the office right now, but I worked in this building. That was crazy. Dear Media. So I started doing her podcast, and I was like her astrologer, her resident astrologer on the relationship podcast. From that podcast, someone saw me on it, and he reached out and said, hey, I have an editor position opening up at astrology.com. Are you interested? So like, it was one of those things, like that was through my past, and then this connected the dot, and then this connected the dot. So this is why it's so important. I just want to keep like honing in on why it's so important to just be your authentic self. Like whatever you do, be your authentic self. Because I would have never had none of these things I like tried to do. They kind of like fell in my lap because I was working hard and staying in alignment. And so the universe was rewarding me for these, you know, being in alignment. And some of these things are in my chart. I want to mention we all have our own ways of like getting to where we need to go, but for me, when I'm like in complete alignment, you know, putting myself out there, showing up as a Leo midheaven, like not being afraid to be in the spotlight, even though it makes me uncomfortable, things happen for me. So I was like, of course, astrology.com, are you kidding me? This is one of the sites that I used to study back in 2005 when I met the Astro Twins. Like, it's just crazy that I even got this call, because I remember one of my biggest things, like my Capricorn boyfriend that I was with, I say Capricorn because, you know, they're notorious for like business. He kept saying like back in 2006, 2007, like, why don't you start a business? Like, you're doing this, like start charging people for this. And I'm like, nobody's going to pay for astrology. Like, it's too taboo. Like, yes, of course people are paying for, like, what? That sounds crazy now that I even thought that. But back then I didn't have like the confidence or the belief that I could make like, you know, a career, or let alone get our business from it. So anyway, the astrology.com editor job came up, and it's like, it's a dream job. Like, are you kidding me? I get to write about astrology. I need to read and edit astrology pieces. I get to make video content about astrology. It's literally like a dream. It's, you know, like, so that happened. Now, this is where things get really juicy. Gary at astrology.com, he was like, oh, we're doing a partnership with the Astro Twins. And I was like, skirt. I'm like, the Astro Twins, what? Like, and I tell him the story. I'm like, yeah, like this, like, yes, I met them. Like, I don't know if they remember me, but like, they're such a big part of my astrology journey. Anyway, we get on Slack together, and I'm like telling them like, hey, Ovi and Tally, like, do you remember me? It's Tamerri, And they're like, oh my God. Like, this has been 20 years, basically. 2005 to 2024, essentially. And the Astro Twins had this big partnership with astrology.com. And I was like, oh my God, like, what are the, like, how full circle is this? Like, and it's just like so crazy. So anyway, long story short, they were launching a book called The Astrology Advantage. This is the book, The Astrology Advantage. And, they were like having like a small, like, get together at their friend's house, and they invited me, and I was like, don't threaten me with a good time. So, I went to their like book thing, and when I tell you like the amount of alignment in the air at that, it was like a small group of us, but like there's like a few astrologers, there's like non-astrologers, like a beauty tycoon in the room. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm in this is the best situation for myself. And Ovi and Tally are like literally the nicest, most humble, down to earth, just, they're amazing people. And I really, really felt super blessed to reconnect with them, and like, just tell them what I've been doing for like you have been such a big part of my astrology journey. Like, you need to know this. They signed my book, and I met, you know, a couple astrologers that I make relationships with there. So that felt really good. Fast forward, now it's 2025. The Astro Twins are launching their Become Your Own Astrologer course. That they do. I think they do this annually, but it's a course essentially where you can study to learn your chart and become your own astrologer. This course is for beginner or advanced astrology lovers. Like, I took it back in, it's 2012. I looked up when I took it. I took it in 2012 after I'd been already studying astrology for some years. So this is like a very juicy course, but you don't have to have any prior astrology knowledge to take the course. You can get certified by the Astro Twins by taking this course. When I did it, I remember there being like this big fat workbook and like things you can reference, and they make it really practical and like easy to understand. They're Sagittarians, but they have Capricorn ascendant, Scorpio moon. So if you know anything about Capricorn placements or Saturn placements, you're able to like see like big picture business opportunities and break things down really practically for people. And then Sagittarian is about Jupiter and teaching. So they're very great teachers, right? So like, I highly recommend this course for anyone that's like really interested in astrology and taking it to the next level. I also got a certification from another astrology school. So I've done a lot of astrology education over the years, like Kepler. I did a retreat in Bulgaria. Like, I'm an astrology student. Like, that's one thing that for me, like, I'm a continuous learner. I'm always learning new techniques. I find new things about my chart consistently, even though I've been looking at it now for 20 years essentially. But the Astro Twins They are like one of the easiest to understand and easiest to execute courses that you can take. So I highly, highly recommend this program. I'm actually going to link it below if you're interested in learning more about astrology. The thing about astrology that I want to mention to wrap this up, astrology helps me not only recognize like the personal challenges that I had to experience, like losing my mom and some of the traumas that I've had to overcome. And a lot of us have trauma, right? You know, certain degrees of it. It helped me understand that, but it put it into perspective of like why I experienced that was so that I could grow to become this person that would help people with similar situations or similar traumas, or figuring out who they're becoming, or people that are dealing with, you know, self-esteem issues, or just challenge in general. Like part of my purpose, I'm a healer. My executive coach, Christy Rutherford, she helped me come up like with 3 words what my purpose is. She had me write this and put it up, but I am a global wellness brand leader, healer, teacher. So that's my purpose. I'm clear on it. Doesn't mean that it's easy. Doesn't mean that everything falls into my lap. I've worked really, really hard to get to where I want it to go. And I have so much further to go. I'm just, you know, life is a journey. Right now I'm figuring things out, like what I want next. But the astrology gave me the clarity as to what my purpose is, how I could go about expressing all sides of myself in my life, and how I become better in the lessons I'm supposed to learn. It's been the single most important tool in my life in terms of clarity, healing, evolution, interpersonal relationships. It's just a tool that I always default back to. Of course, I'm into other spiritual modalities, but like astrology is bae for me. Like astrology is bae. Like I will never, like I don't, never say never, but I don't see a life without it. It's been part of my life since I was an infant, essentially. And so I just want to close this out by saying, if you are in a place where you need some clarity and you want to figure out, you know, where do I want to go? If you want to know more about yourself, if you want to know more about other people, if you want to help other people, become your own astrologer course is a really good way to start that journey. And people ask me all the time, like, do you teach? Can I take your class? Right now, I don't have the capacity for that at this moment. So this is the next best thing that I can recommend. And I would never get on here and make a whole video. I wanted to make this video for a long time about my astrology journey, because I get asked about my professional journey a lot and how I got into this, but I would never co-sign or, you know, recommend something that I didn't truly believe in. And so the Astro Twins, they are like such an important part of my journey that I'm happy to share this course, and hopefully one of you will, you know, be enlightened by it and can take it and have the opportunity to work with Ophi and Tally, because they are really just phenomenal women, just some real ass bitches. I know there's things I probably left out in terms of my journey. The only thing I want to say is, so as a Taurus is connected to the physical material world. It's ruled by Venus, the planet of love and beauty. I have Venus and Aries in the 6th house, and the 6th house is, you know, your daily work environment. It's health, it's service to others. And so that Venus in the 6th house is the things that you do every day. So it's really important for me to have beauty, wellness, luxury, comfort every day in some way, and to work in the like a beauty industry, something that's very, you know, visually stimulating for myself. And my Venus makes a trine to my midheaven in Leo. Leo is also about like, you know, creativity and expression. So I should be working in a creative field. That Taurus sun in the 7th house, 6th house in Placidus, but 7th house in whole sign, maybe working one-on-one with people, doing relationship work, partnerships being important. But that Scorpio, you know, energy in my 1st house is that deep, like metaphysical healer, can't live surface level energy, all squaring my moon in Aquarius, doing something different, eccentric, coming from, you know, a background that's maybe unique. And it's in a T-square, and T-squares are about like driving a car with 3 wheels instead of 4. And it can be a challenge, but the way that you kind of balance out that energy is through the opposite point. And so that's my Leo midheaven. And so what I've tried to do in my career, and I think I've been successful at it, is to incorporate the healing aspect, the depth, the creativity, the beauty, and walking to the beat of my own drum, like following my path, no matter what other people are doing. I don't care what other people are doing. Like, that's just like none of my business. Like, what am I supposed to do? What did God put me here to do? Let me focus on that. And as long as I pay attention to that, I'll be okay. And so I think I've really been able to live my chart. I really want everybody else to be able to do that too. And so you can do that with the Become Your Own Astrologer course. I'm going to link it below. If you have questions, please put them in the comments. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk. This has been longer than I thought, but hopefully I got all the information there and it's useful to at least one person that I did my job.